Well, I am certainly tired of hearing myself talk. So the more you guys can enter in, it'd be awesome. If you don't, we'll just get out of here. We'll go eat some more Choco Tacos. I love this type of thing. What I don't like is sermons. So I could do this for hours with you guys. You should give whoever speaks on Sunday, you should buy them Harleys. Because that is no joke, like doing that week after week. So a little background. We kind of came up with really talking through Drew. We know there's lots of life groups. You've got a really healthy sort of church structure type of thing. So I was going, okay, what do you need? And usually it's the same thing most good churches need, is that there's lots of relational activity, but people still go, but it just doesn't seem to move towards, a friend coming to faith or whatever. So a lot of what I do is essentially what you would call evangelism training, which is just how to create spiritual momentum. It used to be the one thing you had to teach was try to help religious people just be normal. That was phase one. So how not to be a dork or oppressive or what they expect. I find that still helps at times. It takes a long time to recover from our normal religious stuff. We do have, I don't know if you notice it, but we do have our own language. We have our own tribal customs, and people pick up on those. Sometimes we forget, that we do talk differently than people, and so, you do have to recover from some of that stuff. But once you feel like, no, I think I'm actually a pretty darn good person, and people like me and respect me, then the next question is, how does it begin to move towards, spiritual stuff? Because of Ryan's epilepsy, almost everybody that came to faith in our churches came to faith literally in our homes. So there was very little what you would call evangelism during a Sunday gathering or something like that. It was all kind of life on life, and therefore the discipleship process also was life on life. So we never, in our setting, we never had a building, for one. So people had to just learn how to see their own friends come to faith and then take care of their friends. So when it worked dandy. So Portland, Denver, we had about 25 communities, essentially life groups that had very specific missions. And we said, anything that happens spiritually within your own sphere, you keep leading it. So call us if it gets above your pay grade. But people did kind of, once they realized there was no other option, they would start to go, okay, I think I can lead my own friends. So I did this evening, I tried to figure out, even within this Alton story, how many people that I've just been able to share like the gospel with, where I give them a pretty good picture of what the whole story is about. And so we're really 3 years into our new city, a year and a half into the business aspect, and there's about 300 people that I've been able to just, so I was going, okay, how did that happen? Is that just a weird, Hugh Halter thing? And I think there is gifting in evangelism, but I think most of what we've done, I think there are almost more skills of creating momentum, kind of creating a broader funnel. There's kind of a story of what's called the dragnet. It's a parable of the dragnet, of how you basically create momentum in different spheres, and then you start to see what naturally is coming out of those. I will tell you, I don't spend any time pursuing anybody. So for those of you that are maybe more introverted, you don't feel like you're aggressive, almost timid, you'll be a better evangelist than people that go at people. So don't feel like you can't eventually have a really good conversation with people. But I never pursue people until until I see some stuff happening. So I think maybe last time I was here, or sometime, or Drew did it, some of your staff did it, they were using kind of a grid that we gave through the Flesh book. Anybody read the Flesh? So a couple, but we're talking about kind of the way Jesus did this. And I won't go through all 5 parts, but everything that we're doing in the post kind of still runs through this grid that, sorry, I'm about to write with that. That's a chapstick. That won't do me any good. Where's the See what happens when you speak too much? So as a way to enter in, incarnational stuff is just, think of it as life on life, people on people. Incarnational is not programmatic. So sometimes churches will do programmatic stuff where a bunch of us go out and do something. Think of incarnation as just you, just individually. Where are you engaging and forming relationships? So, the places that you can see that we're engaging because we have a business, it's a lot easier when you have a place that people come to, right? So I've got the opportunity to go to my daughter's yoga. I can go to the CrossFit gym. I can sit in the coffee shop. I've got different house communities around that are engaging. So those would be pictures of essentially people relating to other people. Okay, so once if you go, well, I'm not getting any spiritual momentum, the first thing I usually ask is, well, where are you naturally connecting? And if there is no natural connection, that's where your work has to be. Okay, so in fact, I did a training at a church that had 4,000 people, and on average, they saw about 2 adults a year come to faith. So they were like, hey, we need help. And so I did a little talk on incarnational stuff. All of their staff were PhD level. And so we were talking about, where are you engaging with people? And one person said, well, how do you engage people? I went, okay, let's back it up a little bit here. I said, you do things you love doing. You just do those with people that don't know the Lord. And he came back, he said, well, what if you don't love doing anything? So I was like, okay, I'm coming back next week, and we're going to do a talk called How to Get a Life. And nobody laughed at that. They were like, oh, okay, all right, this will be good. So, I always say, when you're trying to create spiritual momentum, don't do weird stuff. Don't do dumb stuff. And for sure, don't do stuff you don't like doing. So if you go, okay, well, Hugh talks about throwing parties, and he's good at that. Well, if you don't like throwing parties or having anybody into your house, don't do it. Because you generally won't keep doing something that you don't like doing. So if you like fly fishing, if you go, that's what I like doing, then that's where we start. That's how you get a life. If you like working out, then working out will be a thing. If you like walking your children with the double stroller down to the park, and you just love doing that, then you'll start to find a few other people that like doing that, and then that becomes the natural engagement. So start with what is easy and what you enjoy and incarnate. Does that make sense? Any questions just about that part of it? Okay. So I'm just basically telling you, don't make stuff up. And don't try to be something you're not. If you're an introvert, doesn't mean you're not going to be good with people. It just means you don't like people. No, it doesn't. It doesn't even mean that. It means that being with people takes energy from you. So your schedule on how you're with people will be different than an extrovert. So it's really more how you recover from people. So I'm an introvert, so I need recovery time. But I'm the one that throws all the parties. Always have been. So I'll tell Cheryl, hey, Friday night, let's do one. Well, as soon as I said it, I go, oh, shoot, I wish I hadn't done that. Every time, my whole life. But I always set the party because my heart is evangelism. I just want to see stuff happen. And then when they're all there, I wish they would go home. And then I can't wait till the last one finally leaves. And then we sit around and we go, oh, it's good that we did that. That's more normal for people. So don't feel bad if that feels like you're lifting a lot of weight. And some of you could do that. If you're extrovert, you just want to keep the party going. And let's do another one next week. I find in reality, in most marriages, you very rarely find 2 extroverts. And so there's more tension points related to how we're going to engage. So we can talk through that later. So once you figure out where you're going to engage, and I guess I was engaging. This is maybe why I get a little bit more fruit in that basket, because there's, so literally out of the 300 people that I've shared the gospel with, there's 30 people that come to this CrossFit Abbey. So that's every week. I'm just sharing the full gospel story with them, and we're walking through. But twice this year in the CrossFit gym, our CrossFit manager's dad died. And then we just had a couple that just lost a 20-day-old baby. Well, in both those settings, none of these people go to church, so guess who gets the call? So I did the funeral for Corey's dad, and then I was helping do all the ministry with this young couple. And so for Corey's dad, it was 150 people, and that's just me getting to share as Corey's friend about the Lord and about his dad and stuff like that. So sometimes it's not just individual people that you get movement for. And a lot of times the missionary life is you're just positioned as a missionary, and you're waiting for the crap to hit the fan for people. And how many of you have had no movement and then something really difficult happens for somebody, and then all of a sudden there's movement? In our Denver story, after 3 years, 7 of the 8 homes that were on our street were a part of our church movement, except one family that was kind of like the holdout family. And it was kind of a funny story. Our son found some boxes of pornography in the garage playing with this neighbor's son. And so the dad was so mortified that we knew about that, he wouldn't even make eye contact. Until one night, it's midnight, and we get a knock on the door, and it's the 2 parents, and they're in tears, and I thought, they're finally coming over to talk about the porno stuff, and they're just like, I remember he said, we just didn't know who else to go to, and we're like, well, what happened? And they just found out that their son, Tyler, had been diagnosed with bone cancer. But we were positioned as the missionaries on the neighborhood, and so then stuff began to move with them. So don't always think that spiritual momentum is something you have to muster up and keep moving. A lot of times life moves it along, and sometimes the Lord moves it along. Sometimes they move it along. So there's 30 to 150 people related to those sort of tragedies. Within Journeyman, here it is. So I started a little thing, and now this would be about the only thing that I would say that you should initiate. You can initiate conversations around meaningful things. So last year at the CrossFit gym, when I knew that I had some respect with a lot of the young guys there, just by, I would go into the gym, and I would, instead of just going, hey, I would go, how was your week, Joe? And Joe would go, it was okay. Thanks for asking. Sure. And then the next week I'd go, you have another good week, Joe? No, I'm in a scuffle with my boss. Well, you got 5 minutes? Tell me about that. So a lot of the spiritual momentum that we've gotten is literally because I do initiate a lot of curiosity. Maybe remember that out of anything I say. Try to only initiate curiosity. Ask questions, and when they answer and they seem engaged, ask them more questions. And make sure you ask them about it the next week and the following week. And then if they say something like, actually, it was the worst week I've had in a long time. If people will start to share that, then what I do initiate is, how about, I don't know if you have time, what about just you and I going out for a cup of coffee? Actually, once you come into the post, I'll buy you a free cup. Tell me about that. And so then I will set up sort of a extended listening time. And what I intentionally do is never try to give an answer or try to share the gospel. I literally am just trying to let them know that I really care. That's all I ever do. So in that sense, that's what I'm saying. I never go at people except to go at them to listen. And usually in that, you begin to find that then they start to come at you. Okay, so I often say that evangelism is not going at people, it's literally walking backwards. Okay, and every once in a while you move forward. Hey, can I help you? So if something goes wrong, sometimes I go, hey, could I bring some guys over and help you with that thing that you brought up the other day? Okay, and then I just keep walking backwards because now they're starting to come and they're asking and they're bringing stuff up. So Journeyman, I sent out a Facebook post to the CrossFit guys, and all it said was, fire, meat, whiskey, men, halter home. And I said, come if you want. And so 25 young guys showed up. And I did all those things with these guys. Our town is not a connoisseur town. It's a Budweiser town. So they didn't even know what a fine whiskey was or something like that. So I passed out a little card that said connoisseur on it. And I said, how many of you guys like regularly drink alcohol? And they were all like, oh yeah, a lot. I said, when you drink, do you drink like to get drunk, to get a buzz on? Or they're like, well, yeah, why else would you drink? And I said, I want to teach you guys a concept that I think might make your life feel better. Remember how in the value system we talked about redemption? Redemption is not being afraid of normal things people do, but bringing redemption to it. And so I taught him the idea of a connoisseur as somebody that never abuses anything, that you learn to enjoy things because you do them less often and less quantity. So you learn to enjoy the taste of something instead of escaping something. And so I could see the guys love that. And then I asked them, I said, have you guys ever had a mentoring constellation, like a fraternity of men where you can actually talk about real issues, from your marriage to your addictions to whatever? And none of these guys ever had. So I told them that this has been something I've always done. I said, we're new to town. I love you guys. We work out together. But if you would ever want me to facilitate that, I'd be happy to. So I said, next week we'll start this. And so if you want to come. And all 25 of the guys came back. And then I said, what do you guys want to talk about? And one guy said, my uncle died. I've always wanted to try to live an honorable life. So I said, how about I do 6 talks on things that make you an honorable man? So they were just kind of crossover topics. They were great conversation starters. And then at the end of that, and as that was going on, wives at the CrossFit gym would come up to me and go, that's real nice that you're doing that for the boys, but why don't you do that for the women? And I said, well, because I don't do journey women. I don't, but then that started conversations with my wife, who's now doing some stuff with some of the ladies. So sometimes I will initiate a conversation piece, but I won't do that until I know that I have some level of respect with them, right? You would never just invite 25 guys that hey, you want to come over and talk about meaningful things? That's a weird invitation, right? But if you can, we always say, don't take the vote till you have the vote. When you know you have people's respect, then I think people love meaningful conversations. So let's go ahead and let's start some of that. They obviously asked me to do that for them. So these are conversational pieces. I was trying to think of where else we got some movement. Yep, so the Journeyman's about 30 guys. Side door, this has, again, been our missionary training. Some of the people who have gone to that are not believers, but we actually tell them we're trying to learn to live like missionaries. So in that, they hear the gospel, a lot of conversation out of that. And then probably the biggest thing, I know this will seem weird, but I have a little thing called a 2-minute story. I don't know if I mentioned this to you last time I was here, but if I've seen somebody in the coffee shop 4, 5, 6 times, I know that they're becoming kind of a regular. So I will go up to people. It's kind of what I do almost every day that I'm in town. I will go into the post from about 8:30 to 11. That's like my relational slot. And I sit at this one bar where I can watch people come in. And I'm like the good morning guys. Hey, good morning. Thanks for coming in. And if they've come, a handful of times, I'll walk up to them and I will offer them a free drink and I'll say, hey, it's time for your 2-minute story. And they will sort of clench up their little butt cheeks and get a little nervous. I'll go, relax. I'll say, all it is I can tell you're becoming a regular here. And they'll usually nod or they'll say something nice. Like, yeah, we love it here. And I'll say, well, you're going to end up being a part of the family. And so all we really care about is that we can remember everybody's name. And it helps me to remember your name if you would just give me 2 minutes of your story. And so usually then they calm down and they get kind of excited. And I'll sit down, I give them a free cup of coffee or whatever they're having. And I just say, look, you can make this stuff up. It doesn't even have to be true, but it'll still help me to remember it. But they always tell me, usually 20 minutes is a 2-minute story. And I make sure I never try to give them any of my story unless they ask. Usually they'll come up a few weeks later and go, okay, what about your 2-minute story? And I go, how many minutes do you have? So I've had a 6-minute, 2-minute story from a young girl that was going to commit suicide on that particular day. And during that 6-hour time at the post, I brought over one of our young barista gals and, just to connect them up. And now she's a part of our community, part of the Side Door community. So I just want you to see that the natural momentum of people, it has to have some incarnational, relational connect. I don't, strangely you might think I would, but I don't try to talk to people on airplanes. I don't have any relationship with them. I put headphones on and take a nap. I just try to go wherever I know I'm going to have long-term relationship with people. I suppose every once in a while God might prompt you to say something. But it seems like the times in my life where I felt like strangely prompted, I regretted it later. Felt like I'd moved too fast. I didn't have the relationship. And I trust the Lord now. I don't think, like we were taught maybe in church growing up, I don't think people go to hell because we don't get to them in time. I think that's really bad theology. I think the Lord's incarnation was he lived 30 years in the neighborhood before he even said anything. Like, how many of you could do that? Like if you were God and you just have dinners with people and ask them how the week was, So that's, I guess momentum number one is make sure that there's some natural places that you incarnate. And then next, I'd say reputation. Where are you becoming good news? What are you doing? So today was a lot about doing good works, right? I really don't know if there's anything that will give you more ability to speak about Jesus than doing things that Jesus cares about. Again, don't do stuff that's unnatural. Don't try to just go down to the soup kitchen, once a month or whatever. What we taught people, like if I was helping with your life groups, we taught all of our life groups to essentially wait for something spontaneous to happen. So we said specifically, don't go down to the soup kitchen. Don't do what would be a checklist item for you. Wait till God moves your whole community. So when we would have, usually most of our life groups would meet at least every other week, and then we'd have 2 weeks open. So one of those weeks we said throw a party. So just get together. So you're still together every week, but one of those weeks you're not really doing a study or something. You're just having dinner. Those were natural ways to bring people. And more spiritual momentum happened through the party time than through the other stuff. Okay, so we're building in the party so that conversation will happen. If you invite friends to a life group and you're doing a study, that's not bad, but they generally won't be honest with conversation. But if you just throw a party and go, how was the week? They will oftentimes be very honest, and then you're off and running, okay? And then the fourth week, we said just reserve it to just go bless people, but wait till something comes up. So if we're having one of our times, we would always stop and go, hey, if any needs come up this week within any of our friendships, and if somebody goes, yeah, I got a friend that's going through a rough time, we would try to figure out how we could bless them within 24, 48 hours. And sometimes it would be to help, clean up a house. I remember one family, their house almost burned down. So a friend brought that up, so we just all went out that next Saturday and we cleaned up their house, That created some momentum. They actually eventually became a part of what we were doing because of that one service type of thing. So reputation and then eventually conversation. So any just thoughts or questions to this point? What light bulbs are coming on that are helpful right now?